Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about altcoins in general and why the risk on altcoins remains high. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the premium list at intothecryptoverse.com. Now, this is something we've spoken about on the channel for the last few weeks, something we've been talking about on the premium side for the last 4 or 5 months. But I want to talk about just why the risk on altcoins remains relatively high right now. Okay. I'm going to show you a lot of the same charts, but I do think that repetition, and to really identify the risk that you're taking versus not taking by holding or not holding altcoins. Okay. Now, one of the common things I've seen over the last few weeks is that a lot of the sort of the discussions revolve around, well, the markets are holding up relatively well given the circumstances, and Bitcoin is technically putting in higher lows, and this is sort of one of the reasons why a lot of people would say it's a bull market. But remember, just to be brutally honest with ourselves, remember in 2018 we were also seeing higher lows until we didn't. Okay, so this is what I'm warning people about. This higher low mentality, it works until it doesn't, and then once you put in a lower low, the entire game changes, right? The entire game changes if a lower low comes. Okay. And so I really want to dig into that. Like, what happens if a lower low comes? What happens to the altcoin market? Okay. Now, the way you understand altcoin performance is by measuring that performance against Bitcoin. So let's suppose you don't want to hold fiat because you know that it's basically going to lose its value in a year, whereas by holding Bitcoin, there's at least a chance that it could outperform over a year time frame. Like, there's a chance. Whereas by holding fiat, it's going to go down. The reason it's important to measure altcoins against Bitcoin is because if you want exposure to the asset class, there's a number of ways you can go do that, right? You can be heavy Bitcoin, you can be heavy altcoins, you could be heavy Ether, whatever it may be. And I just want to help you identify what the risk is based on the strategy that you are currently carrying out. So if a lower low occurs, and we're going to really dive into this again. We've already talked about it a number of times over the last few weeks. But again, if a lower low occurs upon the rejection from the 200-day, okay, and we go put in a lower low. So some people have asked, well, what would a lower low mean? You keep saying the term lower low. What does that mean? A lower low with respect to what? I'm not even talking about necessarily a lower low with respect to the summer lows, though we could go there. I'm talking about with respect to where we went in January. So if Bitcoin were to go, and then again in February. So recently, Bitcoin has been holding the line here at around $38,000 to $39,000. But if Bitcoin were to say drop down to, I mean, really the trend line breaks if we go, easily if we go back down to say 36 or 37K. But imagine that Bitcoin has a wick down, or a not even a wick, but let's just say it has a bleed down here. And then we bounce. Okay. This down here, I think, would provide a decent amount of support on the first test of it. Okay. So if you imagine if Bitcoin puts in a lower low where it takes out the prior uptrend, like in 2018, remember this trend here is where the structure of the market changed. Okay? I mean, again, listen, some people get upset with me drawing the parallels between what we're experiencing right now and some of the stuff we saw in 2018. But we have to stick with the data no matter what, right? We can't get bogged down in what we want to happen, or what our portfolio, what we want our portfolio to do. But we need to look at what has happened in the past and say, if we put in a lower low, what happens? The altcoin Bitcoin market changes. The altcoin market against the Bitcoin market. The best way to understand that is by looking at the Bitcoin dominance. Okay. And to say, we've been putting in lower highs, okay? We've also been coming down to this range down here. And I know what you're thinking. You're probably looking at this and you're saying, well, Ben, I mean, this is probably just going to break to the downside. And the thing is you could be right? Like, you could be right. But the reason I want to draw this parallel is because as I've showed you guys over the last few weeks, the dominance right now is at the exact same level it was at in June of 2018. The exact same level. And then the dominance shot up. Why did the dominance shoot up in June of 2018? It started in June of 2018 and it didn't stop until September, right? I mean, you're talking about several months of the dominance moving higher. So why? What happened in June of 2018, right? What happened? That's where Bitcoin put in a lower low, okay? So the reason I'm showing you this is because all Bitcoin valuations can fundamentally change if Bitcoin puts in a lower low. We don't know yet if Bitcoin's going to put in a lower low, but I would say there is a risk of it happening, a very high risk of it happening. So if Bitcoin puts in a lower low, the structure of the market changes completely, okay? The reason is because the bulls can no longer hold on to the thesis of, well, it's still a bull market because we're putting in higher lows. Then the bulls have to give some ground and say, okay, we're just in, it's just a long sideways phase. And again, they could be right and it could play out to be like that, but at least the argument of it being a bull market could be over in the short term if we in fact end up putting in a lower low, and then we have to go back down and test the bottom of this range. Just like we had to go back down and test the bottom of the 6K range back in 2018. So the way to think about it is say like the 30K range is a similar type range as your 6K range in 2018. So over here, the range that we kept going down to was 6K, but over here, you could argue that it's closer to, say, 30K is that same, that basically that same range, more or less. So you have 6K and 30K. So the floor from here to here has gone up 5x, right? It's gone up 5x, but the structure is still somewhat similar, okay? So the reason why this is important is because the Bitcoin dominance is currently sitting at around 42%. Now, if Bitcoin puts in a lower low, if let's suppose, whether 30K holds or not, which again, it could hold. I mean, it held in the summer of 2021, but whether it holds or not, you're still likely looking at the Bitcoin dominance coming up. Okay, I think it's more likely to break to the upside than break to the downside. I mean, I could be wrong, right? I mean, like I've been wrong about things before. I'm not trying to say that I can't be wrong, but I think this is more likely to break up than break down if Bitcoin puts in a lower low. That's what I think. Okay, I think it's more likely to break up than to break down if Bitcoin puts in a lower low. The counterpoint, if you want to play devil's advocate, if we want to do that, because I know some of you guys are thinking, what about the Nasdaq? Well, what if the Nasdaq double bottoms here? It could. I mean, it's done that before. If you go back and look, the Nasdaq has in fact seen these like double bottom type patterns to some degree, where it comes down, it goes back up, and then it comes right back down, and then we eventually get moving again. If that happens, if the Nasdaq double bottoms here and then bounces back up, and we're back in business, then you could see Bitcoin's strength come back in the short term, right? You could see it come back. And if Bitcoin's strength comes back, then, and we're back above the bull market support band, so let's suppose that Bitcoin is able to get back above the support band that really defines how the market and how market participants are feeling. If Bitcoin gets back above that and holds it as support, then the dominance could go down. But again, I think the main underlying risk right now is the fact that you have the Nasdaq in danger of putting in a lower low, right? You have the Nasdaq in danger of putting in a lower low. And if the Nasdaq puts in a lower low, there's a good chance that Bitcoin is going to put in a lower low, okay? That's the argument, that if the Nasdaq does it, there's a good chance that Bitcoin could go put in a lower low. And if Bitcoin puts in a lower low, then it's likely the dominance is going to go up, and this is going to be a low and a higher low, and then it'll break out of this, then maybe come back and do a higher low later on. Or maybe it just goes up like it did over here for a few months before finally cooling off some. This is the risk on the altcoin market, okay? I don't say this lightly. I say this with the full understanding that if Bitcoin rebounds, that altcoins could still be a good investment. But in terms of managing your risk, when you're looking at Bitcoin, the dominance, the same levels that it was after getting rejected off the same levels it got rejected off of in 2018, the dominance is at the same level. The Nasdaq is in the risk of putting in a lower low, and the dollar is going absolutely parabolic. The risk on altcoins remains. Okay, it remains. And you're probably sitting here thinking like, well, Ben, altcoins are already down a lot. They are. They can go down more, believe it or not. I mean, I've experienced it many times in the past. I know it can happen because it has happened to me before. So, again, to play devil's advocate against myself, just so you know, again, there's no sure thing in investing. You could argue that since the dollar is reaching some type of potential blow off top, like it did in 2016, like it did in 2020, if this is a blow off top, it could correspond with the Nasdaq double bottoming and then coming back up. And if that happens, then it could correspond with Bitcoin holding this level, the holding the higher low, and ultimately continuing the trend. But doesn't change the fact that the risk is still high. Okay, and normally when you're watching the dollar go parabolic, like it has been, and you can look at the Heikin-Ashi candles on the dollar, when you're looking at something like this, I mean, it's usually not a good thing. I mean, this is 2018 right there, and this is 2014 right here, and this is the end of 2011 when Bitcoin was also in a bear market. So when the dollar is rallying, you get Bitcoin bear markets, right? You get Bitcoin bear markets. When the dollar is going down, like in 2017 and 2020. And even in here it was in 2013, here it was earlier on that led into the first rally of 2013. This was the first rally of 2013, late 2012. This was the second rally. And then this was the first parabolic rally that Bitcoin had. The dollar was going down. What do you notice? Dollar goes up, Bitcoin goes down. Bitcoin goes up, dollar goes down. It's that simple, right? Like it's that simple. So if the dollar keeps going up, then it's likely that things like the Nasdaq could put in a lower low. Okay, so if the Nasdaq puts in a lower low, there's a good chance that Bitcoin will put in a lower low. And if Bitcoin puts in a lower low, that's where you normally see the dominance break back up to the upside. And if the dominance breaks to the upside, what happens to altcoins? They get wrecked. Not only against their Bitcoin valuations, right? They get wrecked against their Bitcoin valuations. Okay, this is important to consider. Right? I mean, because if altcoins get wrecked against Bitcoin and Bitcoin's going down, then it means altcoins are going down even more against the US dollar. So we need to understand that, the risk in the market remains, and namely that is that we've seen this story told in the past, and it played out a very certain way. If it's going to play out a different way this time, then something needs to change soon. Okay? Now, here's the great thing about the idea of Bitcoin's dominance going higher, right? If you want exposure to the asset class because things could turn around and you don't want to miss the boat, Bitcoin could be the answer, right? Because what's the thesis? Bitcoin has to do one of two things. It either has to show strength before altcoins can be strong, or it has to capitulate before altcoins can be strong. So if it has to do one of those two things before altcoins can be strong, then Bitcoin can be the answer, or cash, right? I mean, these are things I speak about a lot on Into the Cryptoverse Premium. We've been talking about it for the last 5 months, but I do want to warn people that the risk on the altcoin market remains high right now. I know some people are holding out hope that we're going to get one more altcoin season and Bitcoin's going to go back to 60K or 55K in the short term. And look, I would love it for it to happen, but I'm not seeing it. I'm just not seeing it right now. And again, to play devil's advocate against the idea that, that we have to see a move back up to these levels, because if this is the peak and you're going to get a dead cat bounce to come back up to then sell it off, I don't know about that. I think the better way to think about it is, if you want to think about it in terms of peaks, you look at this is the peak and this is the dead cat bounce. And the people that are waiting for the dead cat bounce here, they're going to be waiting for a long time. And by the time we come back up to these levels, it's probably going to be for real. So if they're selling at that point, they might be selling at the worst possible time, because that rally could actually be for real. So I want people to understand that the market risk remains high. The main risk is the dollar's in a parabolic uptrend. The Nasdaq could be putting in a lower low. If the Nasdaq puts in a lower low, the Bitcoin price could probably put in a lower low. And if the Bitcoin price puts in a lower low, then the Bitcoin dominance is likely going to go up. If the Bitcoin dominance is going up when Bitcoin USD is going down, then it means that altcoin USD valuations are going down even worse than Bitcoin USD. And that means that altcoin Bitcoin valuations are getting absolutely wrecked. And you're taking on more risk for less reward. And you just have to watch it bleed for a while. There you have it, right? There you have it. That is the risk on the altcoin market. I figure out what you want to do. I can't make the decision for you. I'm not a financial advisor. I do want you to know there is a risk in the altcoin market if Bitcoin puts in a lower low. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up. Check out Into the Cryptoverse Premium. We talk about this stuff all the time. We've been talking about this for the last 5 months. Check it out, intothecryptoverse.com. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.